infrastructure in informal settlements. In a bid to deal with illegal connections in Johannesburg, City Power has decided to provide electricity in what it is called energy mix by providing conventional electricity using prepaid meters, gas stoves and tanks, as well as solar panels. Some of the areas to benefit are Narends Farm, Princess Transit Camp, Setjwetla in Alexandra, as well as Lawley Station. Well, joining us now is Sicelo Xundu, who is the Managing Director of City Power. Good to have you here in studio.
Thanks a lot for inviting me, and good morning to the viewers at home.
When can we expect this project to start?
Leanne, it has already started. I must say that if you look at the Narends Farm, we've already identified Narends Farm. We've also done the Princess Transit Camp in the Rotterport area. We were just with the mayor last week at Lawley Station, where we've also started with electrification, and Setjwetla as well has already started. We've provided the grid supply to all these particular areas. Now we're in the move to provide the solar PV, where we're providing obviously the photovoltaic, where we're harnessing power from the sun, but also over and above that, we're then providing these customers with gas bottles and gas stove, so we've got a bouquet of energy mix within those particular areas.
And how's it going? I mean, what's the feedback been so far?
Exceptionally well. I mean, I did walkabouts last week with the executive mayor on the ground at Lawley Station, for instance, and the people are very excited. They haven't had electricity for a very, very long time. So for them, it's a huge, really excitement. But also the anticipation of getting the microgrid energy mix, especially for the technocrats, they will understand that it's still a new technology, especially in the South African context, where we're actually providing this. So I think there's a lot of excitement, both from the engineers to see this project obviously becoming a success, but also from the individual people, ordinary people on the ground, obviously receiving electricity for the first time.
One of the big problems, and we'll address some of those problems now, but one is, I mean, when we look at the Johannesburg area, I mean, we're talking about approximately 100 informal settlements, and a lot of the people there living there are illegal. They're illegal residents. How do you get around something like that?
We started with this process some time ago. We actually engaged with the Department of Energy from the funding point of view, and we categorized these informal settlements into 3 categories. We looked at those that are actually settled in a suitable land, meaning that there's a possibility for them to be developed within those particular land parcels. But we looked at the other category where we're saying that they're going to be relocated, but they are sitting in a suitable land, but there are other projects that have been identified where they need to be relocated to, and then we looked at the time at which they will be there, and the others where they are sitting in an unsuitable land. So we've categorized all the 189 informal settlements within the city in those categories. So what we're prioritizing now then is to electrify those that we know that they're going to be in situ, so therefore we don't waste the infrastructure into the future, and also those that are going to be relocated but in a very long sort of like time from now. So that's the category that we've actually looked at. But you're right, I think it's a big problem, and the other problem is obviously illegal connections, why they are there.
Indeed.
We've seen a lot of electrocution, like in Zandspruit, case in point, and also in Alex, like Setjwetla that you were mentioning. So we've seen a lot of issues in those particular areas, hence we've made this decision that we'll regularize them. So although they are sitting in illegal land or illegal informal settlements, but what we're doing as the city is to then regularize them as part of our drive to deliver the services to the people. I
mean, you mentioned Zandspruit, and we saw a lot of the residents there taking to the street because you removed these illegal connections. Are they on the list, or they're part of being beneficiaries of this?
Yeah, certainly. If you look at Zandspruit, we've been engaging with Eskom, and our view is to that we actually take over the Zandspruit township or informal settlement, so that we then better electrify them as the city. So those engagements are at an advanced stage. However, we're actually starting with electrification as we speak, so that we cover some of those areas that are really dangerous within the Zandspruit area. So they are part of the beneficiaries, and I think there's an excitement that finally we're going to provide electricity in Zandspruit.
Yeah. What about the huge outstanding bills and that's a really big problem in Soweto. Have you made any headway there? What's the progress?
I mean, look, if you talk about Soweto, obviously that's an Eskom matter of supply. But if you look at the city of Johannesburg supplied customers, we've made huge progress in those particular areas. I mean, part of the media briefing that we had with the chairperson of the board and the member of the mayoral committee was to actually report to the public our review of the business, so that we actually position the company to better service the citizens of Johannesburg. So part of the things that we've basically put in place is that we've actually established a fully fledged business unit that looks at the metering environment procurement and billing. So we've got a one-stop station to deal with the issues of billing. So I think there's a huge improvement. We've seen our smart meters now obviously operating at about over 90% read rate, which is actually a good plus for the citizens of Johannesburg, making sure that the bills are actually much better and cleaner as they go out to the customer. So I think there's a huge progress being made in that particular area. I must agree that there's still a lot that needs to be done, but I think that's why we're calling upon all the citizens of Johannesburg to work with us to make sure that they actually identify some of the installations that are without the meters, where we've got faulty meters, so that we can then better respond as a utility.
I mean, I know that you had a press conference, in fact, on Monday, and you were really talking about these corrupt activities like illegal reconnections. I mean, and it's a big deal because it costs a lot of money to you and to Eskom that have been disconnected due to non-payment, and then they are reconnected illegally. And at some families who say they've got absolutely no income, they can't pay the money. But what are we going to do? I mean, how do you get around a situation like this?
Certainly, I think it's a big problem. What we've identified, especially from the theft point of view, I mean, we reported about 851 cases that are actually before courts as we speak around the issue of cable theft, for instance, bypass of meters, fraud around the metering environment, and we're dealing with those. We've made about close to 300 successful convictions in that particular area. But to deal with the problem is really, a very difficult situation. You find that some people just don't want to pay for electricity. There's been a culture of non-payment. But in other areas, you find that there's an issue of affordability. So how you deal with that is obviously a multi-pronged approach. If you look at the affordability issue, I mean, we've always said that our tariffs, I mean, as we now going through the public participation process around the tariffs, we've made sure that at least they are pro-poor. So meaning that those that cannot afford, we obviously have a certain package called Siyasizana, where we give about free basic electricity, about 150 kilowatt hour free basic electricity. But also, in terms of the tariffs, they are more on the prepaid, and we make sure that we use the step tariff so that those that are not using high electricity, they get to benefit from the process. But those are the instruments that we're using currently to try and deal with the issue of affordability. And when it comes to those delinquents that don't want to pay, obviously where they can actually afford, we've got the credit control measures where we have to cut them off, etc., but engage at the particular level so that there's education as well. Because it's a legacy issue where people don't want to pay for the services. Yeah,
indeed. I just want to get back to an issue of infrastructure, because obviously a lot of the informal settlements in and around the area, and I think this stands for a lot in South Africa, I mean, there are no clear stands, and the reality is that the access is difficult, and this would put a lot of pressure for you for infrastructure in order to bring in these electricity, everything that you're talking about, everything that you're planning. How do we do that?
In that particular, what we've done, we've partnered. Remember, as a city, we've got all the other departments. So we've partnered with the roads agency, we've partnered with the housing. So we've got a comprehensive plan. And I must say that, as I was saying earlier on, it's actually costing us over R1 billion rands just to make sure that we deliver services to these particular areas. So what we do in terms of access, we first negotiate with the customers, and we then make sure that we create some more access roads. If there are also water reticulation that is obviously required, we partner with Johannesburg Water to bring in those services as well from the water point of view. So it's a full package, and we also number some of the stands so that at least there's some sort of sanity. That's why we're saying we're moving these illegal settlements to regularize them before they move to formal settlements. And that's basically the approach that we're taking. So it's a full package, and it's got a well-coordinated approach within the departments in the city.
What about existing infrastructure? Because, I mean, the reality is that it is aging dramatically. I live in an area where we've had outages. I mean, I think I'm supplied by the Roosevelt Park one. That's just one example. I'm sure there can be lots more put on the table. That is always catching fire, it's exploding, and sometimes we're out of electricity for 5 days at a time. What is the story there?
I mean, if you look at the infrastructure that we operate, obviously it's sparsely distributed throughout the city of Johannesburg, exposed to adverse weather conditions, issues of theft, third parties obviously hitting our cables, etc., etc. So those are some of the causes for some of these outages, but also the old fleet in terms of the infrastructure. But if you look at what we've done as a city, we've announced that 100 billion program. Preference programs over the 10-year period. So what we're doing, we're basically investing in the refurbishment, strengthening of infrastructure. If you look at City Power alone, we're basically spending about 30% of that 100 billion, for instance. Just this financial year alone, we're looking at about over 2 billion that we've invested in the infrastructure. If you look at the past 3 years, for instance, we've invested about over 7 billion just in the infrastructure. So it's an ongoing process where we need to renew our infrastructure.
let's leave it there. Thank you so much for talking to us. Good luck with everything and all the plans going ahead. Hey, load shedding, listen, this winter.
It's a thing of the past.
It's a thing of the past, you promised me.
No, but I must say responsibly so, we need to make sure that we save electricity as we go through the winter.
Right.
That's how we're going to deal with the issue of load shedding.
All right.
Thank
Sicelo Xundu, who is the Managing Director of City Power, talking to us about the electricity situation and a new initiative from City Power, getting electricity into informal settlements.